Hi, everyone. Welcome back. For those who are new here, my name is Karen. Please don't hold that against me. I've been talking about my spiritual awakening, my healing journey, which are the same thing, if anyone was wondering. But today I wanted to dial down into the really practical side of this journey. And by the way, my dog just started snoring, so please excuse Oliver. I don't have the heart to wake him up and tell him not to snore. Hopefully it'll get quieter. But basically, yeah, I wanted to talk about how I overcame all of these addictions until really a few short months ago. I mean, so I smoked almost a pack a day of cigarettes for over 40 years, drank every day 2 glasses of wine or 2 beers or 2 glasses of single malt scotch, just depending on the day, depending on my mood. I did that every day for over 20 years. And those were, and then weed. I smoked weed every day for over 8 years. And those were just the physical addictions, right? I also had a lot of mental addictions going on. I was addicted to overthinking, to worrying, I was even addicted to my own perceptions, my own limiting beliefs. And I could have sworn I was really open-minded, but I was very addicted to the beliefs that I had and very stubborn about wanting to admit anything else was true except the way I was perceiving it. And I really want to stress that mental addictions, I don't think they get enough credit for being addictions because they really are just as real and debilitating as a physical addiction. So, if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm not addicted to anything, maybe this won't have any pertinence to my life. You may want to think about those things. If you're a chronic worrier, if you are a hardcore overthinker, you probably have an addiction going on. So, but the sad thing was, I didn't want to stop any of them, really. I mean, I knew I had to quit smoking, but then I would talk myself out of it because I was also at a point in my life where I really wasn't caring about living. I had no desire to really prolong my life. And so I would always circle back to, why bother? Maybe the cigarettes will do me a favor and help me exit sooner. So yeah, I was not in a good place. And I thought, well, I may as well just enjoy my smokes in the meantime, right? So today I'm going to share how I got from that low point 9 months ago to where I am today, which is basically smoke free, alcohol free, weed free. And, I'm still working my way through overthinking and needing to control everything, but I am night and day from where I used to be. Healing is a lifelong journey. There's always going to be something to heal from, and there's different layers too. So even though, like, today I have the physical addictions are gone, but those other things, there's different layers to overcoming things, and I'm committed to it. So anyway, that's where I was. Let me share how I got here. And now, as I was thinking back over this process, right, I determined that there were, so I guess, right, AA has 12 steps. I determined that I had 3 steps to overcoming these addictions. And really, there were like 5 underlying principles that I could think of that supported those 3 steps. So hopefully organizing it in this way will help for both of us, right? So I don't go off on tangents. I'm going to try and stick to the few notes that I've made, and it will help you sort of categorize it in your mind. And if you're needing to use the information, hopefully it will help you to apply it easier as you start thinking about how to apply it in your own life. Let's talk about those 5 underlying principles first. And the first one is, it is not a moral failing to be addicted to something, right? I mean, at the end of the day, an addiction is really some deep discomfort that you have with something about yourself, something in your life, some memory, some situation, some dissatisfaction, some deep discomfort within yourself. The addiction, the habit, whatever it is, drugs, alcohol, whatever, is your way of coping with it. It's a coping mechanism. And so I want you to stop beating yourself up for having the addiction, because I did that for so long and I was so horrible to myself and said just the nastiest things to myself for so long. And it didn't help, right? It didn't fucking help the situation. It made it worse. So, number one, underlying principle, stop beating yourself up about whatever. It was your way of, trying to numb out whatever you didn't like, right? And, that at the end of the day, too, it's basically a habit is getting stuck, right? It's a repeating pattern, it's a cycle, it is this wheel that keeps going round and round. And when you're addicted, you can't figure out how to get off the wheel, even if you want to, right? You're just sort of hanging on for dear life. So that leads to important point number two. Hating yourself is not going to get you off of that wheel. It just won't. So what's the opposite of hating yourself is loving yourself, right? And I don't know about you, but at the point I was at, obviously I wasn't that concerned about living much longer. And I was actually dreading getting much older because I couldn't see making it that long. And so having someone say love yourself seemed like a very far removed concept from where I was. And, and if any people that knew me during, you know, however many past years, right, they're going to think Karen had all of that inside, really? Because, hey, happy face. I could act with the best of them. And some of my closer friends that, you know, that were canny on picking up on energies knew I wasn't happy, but I don't even think they knew just how unhappy I was. Going from hating yourself to loving yourself is a big leap. So if that is you, don't stress about it. Instead of thinking about loving yourself, think about having empathy for your situation. And one of the ways maybe to get there is having empathy for your inner child. And actually, that's a really great way to do it if you can get there, because so many of our issues do go back to childhood, right? And so if you can picture the little girl or little boy that you were and have empathy for that little boy or little girl who wasn't loved in the way he or she should have been loved, who felt abandoned, who felt hurt, who was damaged, who was abused, whatever, if you can have empathy for that little child, then you can apply that empathy to your own situation. If that is too far removed, or if that starts making you feel panicky, stop, just back off. Nobody is forcing you to start thinking about childhood wounds and everything yet. Just back away slowly from that thought and try this instead, okay? Picture that you are somewhere in your house near a window and it's storming outside, right? Maybe you're doing the dishes and you hear this like sound outside the window and you open the curtain, the blinds, whatever, and out there in the storm, there is a little kitten or a little puppy out in the rain, and they are soaked, they're bedraggled, they are miserable looking, even go so far as to imagine a tear, coming out of their eye. They're shivering, just miserable. And you open that window and you bring that little kitten or puppy inside and you wrap it in a towel and you hold it and try to get it to stop shaking. You are showing empathy for that little kitten or puppy. Okay. So you've generated this feeling, this frequency of empathy in your heart. So now apply that feeling to your situation. And the reason I'm getting all detailed about it, right, is that feeling, that love or that empathy that you can generate is what's going to help get you off of that wheel of addiction that keeps going around and around. It just doesn't work if you're hating yourself off of it. Because think about it, that would be like hating or berating or yelling at the little kitten or puppy for being out in the rain. That doesn't make sense, right? It's like, you wouldn't say, "You stupid cat, can't you open the window and get inside yourself?" it doesn't work, right? So do whatever you can, whatever way you can to muster up, if not love, then at least some empathy for your situation. Okay. So, important point number 3, substitutions are still an addiction. What I mean by that is, say you're trying to quit smoking and you decide to start using nicotine patches or you decide to start vaping. And no judgment, right? Whatever is working for you, if you've already started down that path, that's great. Keep doing it, whatever. Just know that at the end of the day, you still have the addiction because you're not, cigarettes are a little bit different, right? Because of the nicotine. But underneath the nicotine addiction, there's some sort of emotional thing that is driving the addiction. And actually, I want to say one quick thing. As someone who was diagnosed with both autism and ADHD last year, I heard one of the, what's his name, Dr. Russell, I say Barkley, maybe, but he's like one of the leading ADHD experts out there. And I heard a video where he was talking about nicotine being one of the best medications. Not that he was saying, hey, go smoke cigarettes, but that nicotine actually like can help treat ADHD. So I'm like, shit, no wonder I smoked for so many years, because my ADHD was like off the chart, or it's the second level, right? But that's one of the reasons it was harder and why it was really hard for me to think about giving up cigarettes. But anyway, underneath that, underneath the nicotine addiction, there's still something else. And let me give you an example of from my own experience why I'm bringing this up. So the smoking, I quit the smoking first, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the second thing I gave up was the alcohol. And, even like 2.5 months into this spiritual awakening journey, I was still drinking every day. And I was definitely still smoking weed every day. But I finally got the download that the drinking needed to go. And so I stopped, and I realized, hey, wait a minute, there's non-alcoholic beer. I can just start drinking that and still have my happy hours. So I was buying these Michelob Ultras or whatever they're called. They're like 29 calories and 0 alcohol, having my happy hour still with these non-alcoholic beers. And Spirit started dealing with me about it, that I was still addicted. I'm like, what the fuck? What? I was actually kind of irritated. I'm like, what do you want? And it was to recognize that I was still addicted to the comfort of my happy hour. And that started from, not being happy at work, and not anything against who I was working for, my work, the companies I worked for over that time. I just was in the wrong place for me, and basically a corporate life. I should never have really been in a corporate life, even though I'm very grateful for the time that I had in corporate life. But at the end of the day, I was being someone I wasn't. And so I was using alcohol, I was using happy hour to signal the end of even though I would keep working for several hours afterwards, I needed that happy hour to signal I get to take the pressure off by having a couple of drinks. So that's why, because at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with alcohol. If you want to have some drinks now and then, that's great. But when you're doing something every day to escape something else, that's the problem. And at the end of the day, like underlying all of my addictions, really, it was about escapism. In some form or another, I was trying to escape this very unhappy life that I had created for myself in all these different ways. So anyway, substitutions, just be careful and know that if you do use a substitute to help get you off of the cigarettes or the alcohol, whatever, you're still probably going to have some work to do. Important point number 4 is that even if you are all alone, which I was, and I don't want to discredit the friends that I have, but I was also had pretty much shut myself off, right? I was in an autistic burnout. I had left my work. I had moved to a new state. I was basically DOA on my couch and not in a good place. But I found out that I was not alone. And this is really critical that I want everyone here to understand, that no matter how alone you think you are not alone. Each and every person, and I promise you this is true, I promise, each and every person has a spirit team. There are spirit entities assigned to each and every one of us. And I did not know this. I didn't believe it. I didn't. And I have a very, since childhood, have had a very strong connection to God. I have been a truth seeker my entire life, but I was raised in the Catholic Church, which I rejected from the 8th grade on. And I've always been pursuing some form of spirituality. In my 30s, I became a born again Christian. I was hardcore into the Bible. I believed the Bible was the inerrant word of God, that every word in the Bible was true. Then when I learned it wasn't, I had my entire world crashed around me. I was almost converting to Judaism. And for the last 20 years, I have been a non-believer. And so when I was basically, having a near-death experience on my sofa last fall, end of last summer, August, September, I thought I was alone. I didn't think I had any angels or spirit guides or any of it. And it turns out that I did. And that's how my whole spiritual awakening started. And the reason that I tell this story is it actually has a lot to do with how I overcame the addictions, right? Because they started talking to me and making their presence known. And so I know that I could not have made it through everything I've been through if they hadn't made themselves aware, made me aware of their being. So each and every one of you has, at the very least, your own higher self who is in spirit form on your team. Each and every one of you has at least one guardian angel on your team. And then there is an assigned spirit guide that each of us has. So there's at least 3 spiritual beings that are right there with you all the time. They want you to be happy more than anything else. They want you to be happy. And the other important thing is they are not judging you. And I say that because I really struggled with that piece of it. I was so concerned that they were judging me for being weak, for having these addictions, for this is actually getting pretty vulnerable. But let me share a recent, I was going back through the journals that I've kept over these last 9 months just recently. And I came across this journal entry from, it was like mid-December, so about 2.5 months into this healing journey. It made me cry when I read this recently because I was, and so I talked when I journal, I'm talking to myself, but I'm also talking to my spirit team. And I just say, hey, you guys, right? I refer to them as you guys quite a bit. And I was writing something like, you guys must be so sick of me complaining and overthinking and, hate my brain. And, you guys must think I'm not even worth the effort. And so when I say spirit guides, that includes God, right? That is the creator, that is my spirit guides, my angels, everybody who's rooting for me, right? And it was so sad to think that I felt and thought so little of myself that I was worried that God would think I wasn't even worth the effort that they were putting into me, And they have since very much let me know how precious I am, how loved I am, and how strong I am for having faced these things and overcome these issues. But they never, ever, ever judge. In fact, one point I'd really like to make here and now, and this is one of the things that I learned during this spiritual awakening, is that we are not here on earth to be judged. Earth is a classroom. It is not a courtroom. And I wasn't the one who said that. I heard that in some near-death experience video. And it was actually part of what helped me to wake up. Because again, I had been raised and I've got so much religious dogma wounding, right? Just bullshit, making us afraid of God like he's some big judge, old man with the white beard that's pointing his finger. And that is not God. That is not God. And that's not angels ready to smite us. They love us and surround us and are our biggest cheerleaders. My spirit team, those are my best friends. I know they will never, ever, ever let me down. And the same with you. I am not special. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to share that journal entry, even though it's embarrassing, is to show, because I don't want anybody that's listening to this somehow thinking, oh, she must just be one of those strong people. She overcame all these addictions. She's got to be strong. Shit, look at what I wrote. I was not strong. Strength isn't something that you're born with, right? It's something you find. Find a fucking kernel of strength somewhere inside of you. Everyone has at least a little mustard seed of strength, right? Mustard seed of strength within them. And then it's like any other attribute, you work it out to help it grow, right? It's like going to the gym and working on your biceps, whatever. You strengthen that way, right? Through doing it again and again and again. So I have not been able to overcome these addictions because of my strength. I did it because I had a little bit of strength, and then my spirit team supported me and encouraged me as every day I did a little bit more and got stronger and stronger. So all of that to say that you have a spirit team. They want you to succeed. You are not alone. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I tend to pull tarot cards or oracle cards at the end of these sessions, and wait till you see the cards that came out. I had already determined what I wanted to talk about. And then I pulled the cards, and every fucking card that I pulled, it actually made me start crying, because spirit was confirming everything that I'm saying. And so just wait. Anyway, before I get off on the next topic, a couple more things about spirit. So besides them not judging, if you are not used to talking to your spirit guides, or haven't even known that they were there, one thing that is kind of an important point is that we all have free will. Every single one of us has free will, right? And they actually can't help you unless you ask for help, or you give them permission to intervene in your life. Because otherwise it would be going against your free will. Here you are, smoking, drinking, doing whatever you've become addicted to. They're not going to swoop in and say, oh, Karen's in trouble. We better come to the rescue. They can't come to the rescue unless you ask for help. Okay. And you do not have to be eloquent about the way you ask. You don't have to be a certain religion. You don't have to even be certain you believe in them. All right. You can say, spirit dudes, Karen said you exist. And I'm not sure if you exist, but please come help me. I'm fucking up my life and I don't know what to do. I give you permission. Any spirit listening that is here for my best and highest good, please come help me. There are some spirits that aren't there for our best and highest good, right? Now, our spirit team always is, but it doesn't hurt to specify that you're only talking to spirits that are there for your best and highest good, right? So the second point sort of goes to that. If you're not sure that you have a spirit team, that spirit guides exist, and you're sincere about it, then ask them to help you believe. Ask them to prove, not that spirit's here to do our bidding and, jump through hoops for us. But if you're really unsure and you want to know, then say, hey, I've never heard of this before. I don't know if I believe. Can you somehow prove to me that you're real? They will do it. If you ask sincerely, they will do it. Just don't be expecting like this voice from on high, John, I am real. I am spirit. It's not going to happen like that, right? They speak to us. You've heard of the still small voice, right? And maybe some of you refer to, especially if you came from a more religious upbringing, maybe you refer to them as the Holy Spirit. Names don't matter, right? We just say spirit now when I'm not saying you guys, just as shorthand, unless I'm talking to somebody specifically, right? But because we also have ancestors and, gods and goddesses even, which that's a whole other topic. There is one creator of the universe, and all these, different souls and are all fractals of the one creator, the one source of everything. But anyway, just you don't have to believe, right? Just ask them to help prove that they exist, and they're waiting for you to ask, right? They want you to know that they're there and that you have support in your corner. So they will use lyrics from a song. I think they're thrilled with social media because they can use your feed to talk to you, and different videos and ads and articles and whatever will come across your feed that will like directly answer a question that's in your head right when you're looking at it, but which has happened to me so many times. With me, they use song lyrics a lot. As a matter of fact, I like to say now that Spirit really is the best DJ I've ever heard, because they can string songs together that tell a story. But, you may get a vision, you may have a memory come up. They'll use some way that's particular to you. Synchronicities, right? Coincidences that are not coincidences. They'll find a way to prove it to you. Okay, let me move on. Let's see what else. Okay, the last and fifth point, the last sort of underlying principle that made everything work in this overcoming addictions part of my story is that you have to be willing to get real with yourself. If you are not ready to get real with yourself, then that's okay, right? Hey, I said I was addicted to cigarettes for 40 years, drinking for 20 years. It's like you have to be ready. A lot of people say you have to hit rock bottom. I don't know if that's true. Well, and you'll hear when I'm about to start talking about the three steps, right? I know I was at rock bottom when my spiritual awakening started, but again, I was still smoking and drinking and smoking weed, way into that healing journey actually having started. So it does require, though, when you're ready, is you have to be willing to look at your bullshit and call it bullshit instead of making excuses. And that's hard, man. That's really hard. Like when I actually quit smoking once in my 30s, and it was hard. It was hard and it was painful, and it took way longer, and I ended up going back, right? Because I really hadn't dealt with the underlying issues. So until you're ready, though, to get real, and if it takes mirror talk, looking at yourself in the mirror straight in the eye and talking to yourself, that's one way to do it. Journaling is another way. Obviously, a lot of people use therapy, and I have to say I never found a good therapist, and it was also a money issue too. And I know a lot of people have money issues. And trying to find a good therapist that really, if you have one, fantastic. Just know that you don't have to go to a therapist. I know that Spirit was the best therapist I ever had, because they know, like a therapist they're only going to be as good as the information that you share with them. And I know in my case, things were buried so deep in my subconscious that I had no idea. I had no idea some of these underlying hurts I had, because they were buried so deep, I couldn't guess it. And it took Spirit prodding and putting the right information in front of me until I gasped in, oh my God, this is me, but I wouldn't have found it on my own. So that's why I say Spirit's been the best therapist I could imagine. So anyway, do whatever you can to start getting real with yourself. If you're not quite there yet, try any small little step will help. Okay. Let's start with the three steps. And I really think that this first step is the biggest reason, or one of the biggest reasons, that I was successful. I don't think, let me put it in the positive, to overcome an addiction, you have to first find something that you want more than the addiction. All right. So it's like, it can't just be that you want to not smoke anymore. It's that you need to want something more than you want the smoking. Because again, I didn't want to give up smoking. I really liked it. It served a lot of purposes for me. And again, at that point, it was even helping me to die faster than, I didn't want to be around anymore. But I was not actively suicidal, but I wasn't doing things to help me live longer. And I finally found something I wanted more than smoking. For me, everyone is different. I will just briefly tell you what it was for me because it does play into the whole thing. I said I was in this state of not really wanting to live, this extended autistic burnout, and then spirits started making themselves known to me through music, through all these different synchronicities happening. It was a really wild time, actually. I mean, looking back on it, there were so many signs and strange things happening, and I finally started cluing in that I wasn't alone. Then I heard a voice, and again, there are different psychic gifts. And by the way, we all have these spiritual gifts. We are all psychic. We've just never developed them. And granted, some people, it's like different people have different strengths. Some people are going to have really obvious, strong gifts, and other people, it's like maybe they just have a little bit. It's like, everybody doesn't sing like Adele, right? Some people just croak out happy birthday, but they can sing. So in that sense, right, we each have the ability to be clairvoyant, be clairaudient, all these different clairs, the clarity of hearing, clarity of vision, clarity of knowing, which is claircognizance, clairsentient, so some people just have a feeling. And one of my gifts is clairaudience, so I can hear. And that's why Spirit does use songs to speak to me quite a bit. And there have been times, though, that I hear very clearly them speaking to me, and not that often, but that's one of the reasons it's so powerful. And one of the things that I heard when I started cluing into not being alone was, give us 6 months and we will change your world. And so I heard it so distinctly, and then I got pissed because I shared that I have a lot of wounding around my relationship with God. When I discovered that the Bible was not the full, accurate word of God, the world fell out from under me. It rocked my world so hard, and I was so hurt. I was so hurt because I had believed that for like 10 years with everything in my being. And so I didn't want to go through that pain again. And it had also happened earlier too in another situation. And I didn't want to put myself through that betrayal, which is what it felt like, right? I felt like God had betrayed me. Quite honestly, even from the narcissistic abuse situation I had been in, and that family member was a very dogmatic religious believer. And there was a time I actually felt like I was God's hoe, that I was being used to support this person, because that person actually said that the only reason I was being so successful in my business life was because God was blessing me so I could support them, right? And it made me feel like I was being used by God because I sure wasn't getting much out of it. And so I had all these very deep, painful wounds. And here's God saying, give me 6 months and I'll change your life. Got angry. I was crying and walking back and forth in my living room and basically holding God's feet to the fire. Not proud of it now, but that's what it was like. In that I was like, if I do this, if I give you 6 months, you have to promise me that you will not let me be deceived again. Because at the end of the day, I was holding my own feet to the fire, but making God spirit responsible for it, right? Don't let me deceive myself. Don't let me believe something that isn't true again. They've been faithful to that, right? There've been a few times over this past 9 months where I started getting interested in certain videos I was seeing or different topics, and very strongly was redirected. There's a saying that redirection is protection, right? If you ask God, don't let me get deceived, please, then they will do it. But because hey, again, free will. If we want to start imagining things are real and going down a certain path, then it might happen if you want it badly enough, right? So anyway, I finally gave in and committed to 6 months. So that was the night of that tearful conversation was September 30th. On October 1st of 2024 is when I started this 6 months. I committed to going all in with God and seeing what happened. And the first thing that I heard once I agreed to do this was that the only responsibility that I had during this 6 months, that they would take care of everything else. The only thing I had to do was commit to raising my vibration. Now, that took me aback because I'm like, what? I didn't know what that meant. I've since learned that everything is energy, everything is frequency, so that was what I was charged with doing, was raising my vibration. So that was on October 1st. On October 5th, it didn't take me long to find out that smoking was an extremely low vibration thing to do, and it really keeps your vibration down. And so I wanted this 6 months, God turning my life around, more than I wanted to smoke. For the first time, I wanted something more than I wanted smoking. And so that's why I'm telling you that whole story. Now, again, I think that if you said, God, I want my life to change too, have that conversation with your spirit guides, right? I do know if you want to raise your vibration, spirit will be all over it, man. They're going to support you in doing it because they want your connection with them. And that raising your vibration makes it easier to connect with them, to hear from them. So, but it may be something else for you. Just find something that you want more than the addiction. Okay. So then that leads to step number 2. And again, this was another one of those times that I heard a very distinct voice from God tell me what to do. And that was whenever I felt the urge to smoke, whenever I, was struggling, to be still. And again, at that point, I didn't know what that meant. I had never meditated, or I've tried it, right? But whatever. I didn't really understand this concept, but basically what I would do is every time I wanted a cigarette, I would go outside onto my patio, which is where I always smoked, and onto my back deck. So I just never smoked in the house. I smoked outside. So I would go outside. I would stand there with my hands in my pockets, and I just got super still. And I got still in my body, but more importantly, I got still in my mind. And so each time that craving hit, I would go out and just stand there and get still. And God took the craving. Each time I went out, it got easier and easier. And I want to say, with the smoking thing, again, I quit once before in my 30s. It was never as easy as it was almost easy to quit smoking. I swear to God. And I'm not saying that that'll be exactly how it happens for you. I think I had so many other addictions and so many other problems that I needed help with. And God knew that the smoking was like going to be the hardest one for me. And it's almost like that was a miracle. It was like I was delivered from smoking because it was pretty damn easy. I mean, it was just like, I almost even want to say a day and a half of physical symptoms, and they weren't even all that bad. And I almost just started going. I was going outside to be still more because I liked the feeling of being still. And it's not so much that I was having a craving. It was a pretty miraculous thing for me. But same thing with drinking. When I wanted a drink, I got still. When I wanted to get high, I got still. When I start overthinking, I get still. And each time it gets a little bit easier. Okay. So then the third step, and this kind of relates back to what I was saying about getting real with yourself. It's the third step, what you're not necessarily in that craving thing. And so, the being still is a very point in time type of thing to do. But, you live the rest of your life and you have to sort of commit to diving into the discomfort because again, it's not the smoking, it's not the drinking, it's not the weed, there's this underlying discomfort and you have to be willing to dive into it, figure out what that's all about. Now, again, this goes to if you need a therapist, if you journal or whatever. But for myself, I I poured myself into figuring out what the fuck my problems were. And part of that was working with spirit and doing a lot of deep internal work. Just again, it's the getting real with yourself. So just know that there's like these, find something that you want more than the addiction. When you want to do it in that point of time thing, go into a mini meditative state, just get really quiet. But then for the rest of it, you've got to be willing to figure out what the source of your pain is. And I will say what I have found out is like 95% of my problems came from childhood and getting real about what my childhood was, which was not as pretty as I thought it was. So anyway, that's how I did it. Let me share with you. I don't even know how long this has been. Probably too long. I'll try and edit it down if I can. But I swear to you, I wish I had pulled these cards on camera so you would know they actually came out this way, because it looks like I cherry picked these cards to go with my message. And I promise you, I did not. The first card that came out is Be Still. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. And by the way, this is from the Inner Child Oracle deck by Amanda Lynn Eisling. So be still. Cultivate a space of stillness and silence to just be. The next card that came out, Be Present. Find clarity in the moment. And also from the Inner Child deck, There is Hope Ahead. What a beautiful, perfect card for talking about overcoming addictions, right? Unbelievable. Then I meant to pull 1 and 4 cards came out from the Higher Self Oracle by, who's that by? Deanna Marie Riddick. Comes in this little, which is cute. The first one that came out is Love. Now, I'm like, love, especially because it shows a couple on the front. And I'm not going to go in and read the whole book about it, but at the end of what the book says about love, it talks about self-love, which going back to, you can't hate yourself out of an addiction. You have to love yourself, show empathy for yourself, right? And then another one that's great for overcoming addictions is Overcome Obstacles. So as you go on this journey, as you start trying to give up what you're giving up, just know it's not, there's going to be obstacles that pop up. Like, you've committed to giving up your happy hours and then you have a shitty day, right? Some of the days are going to be tough. And so third card is patience, right? Be patient with yourself as you are loving yourself and supporting yourself through this. Be patient and loving with yourself. And then I swear to God, and I'm actually going to read part of the book from this. I swear this came out. You are not alone, okay? And this says, this card comes to remind you that regardless of where you are, there is always a spiritual team beside you throughout your journey, even if you cannot see them. Your team consists of guardian angels, spirit guides, ancestors, or deceased loved ones who wish to support you, uplift you, and guide you. The Creator Spirit knows that Earth is one of the most difficult schools in the universe and would not allow you to come here without a vast network of resources to use on your mission. Remember, I said Earth is a classroom, it's not a courtroom. And this is they're saying that, Earth is one of the most difficult schools. So yes, there will be disappointment, hardship, and failures, but your team is here to help you see the light within these dark moments so that you can move forward fearlessly If you've been feeling lonely and without support, call out to your spiritual team, since they are more than happy to help and send waves of love your way. If you are unable to sense or feel your spiritual team, then ask your higher self to help you connect, since it knows the best methods suitable for you. And then finally, I pulled one last card from the Angels and Auras Oracle deck by Radley Valentine and Douglas Fraser. I swear to God, angels are watching over you, supported, protected, loved, and encouraged. How perfect is that? So I'm going to leave you right there. I wish you every success if you are trying to overcome an addiction. Please feel free to reach out, comment if you watch this and are not really sure you're ready for it, or maybe you just watch because you were interested and you don't really have an addiction, but know somebody who does. Please feel free to share it with them. I send you all my love and light and support. And remember, peace in, peace out. Take care.